Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from the bunker, and in this video I need to talk to you about Jehovah's Witnesses and whether they should be considered a charity. Now, some of you may have seen that just in the last few days I had an opinion piece published on the website of the National Secular Society. This is in the UK. Now, how this came about was they published a report titled "For the Public Benefit?" in which they highlighted this problem that no one seems to be remotely worried about in the UK, or at least that's how things look from my perspective and probably theirs. And it's this issue of organizations being declared charities just because they are religious or promote religious teachings. Is that charitable? Because the UK has like a long, proud history of, you could say, being charitable. As I mentioned in my opinion piece, the UK is the fourth largest international donor when it comes to aid. But it also has a long tradition, obviously, of being religious. So somehow, due to this tradition, it's just assumed that if your organization is religious or promotes religion, therefore you are providing a service to the public, which is basically what a charity is for. It's to pick up the slack or to help out the government in ways that perhaps the government can't fully, help its population. And so the NSS rightly published this report saying, look, we have just under 170,000 charities in the UK, 12,000 of them, so a reasonable percentage, exist solely for religious reasons, exist solely to promote religion. We think that that's wrong. We don't think that you should be classed as a charity just because you promote religion, because who gets to decide which religion, or indeed if any religion, is something that's beneficial for people? So this report got circulated online, and many of you will be familiar with Covert Fade from the Watchtower in Focus shows. Covert Fade, he noticed this report on Twitter, and he contacted me because we all the JW survey team is in quite close contact on WhatsApp, and he said, Lloyd, you need to see this. Maybe this is something where you can jump in and lend your support, because they are calling out this huge injustice regarding religious charities. So I took a look and thought, yeah, this is exactly what I've been so annoyed about for so long. So credit to Covert for spotting this. I probably would have not necessarily missed it, but not really thought that I could do anything otherwise. But it turned out that Stephen Evans, who is the CEO of NSS, follows me on Twitter and I follow him. So that made it easy for me to reach out to him and ask him, look, is there anything I can do? Because this is a subject that's near to my heart. And he said, well, you could, submit an article and we'll take a look at it. And that's exactly what I did. I set about writing an article. I spent a whole day putting this together, and it was actually quite an emotional experience for me, because this is, it's my country. It's my country of birth, the UK. And also, this has been niggling on me for some time now. And without going into too many details, I have had dealings with the Charity Commission. And as I've explained before, the Charity Commission is nothing like the Australian Royal Commission. The Australian Royal Commission was like a one-off inquiry into multiple organisations. The Charity Commission in the UK is like the watchdog, the regulator of all of the 170,000 charities, regardless of what it is that they're doing. And 5 years ago, they launched a statutory inquiry into Watchtower of Britain. Watchtower of Britain tried suing them to stop them carrying out this inquiry, because Watchtower of Britain thinks that they should be insulated from any form of scrutiny. So they spent charitable donations resisting the Charity Commission's efforts to find out if there were any problems. They failed. The Charity Commission prevailed, and a statutory inquiry was underway. Now, credit to the Commission, first of all, for seeing things through, for making sure that they weren't foiled by Watchtower's overly litigious attempts to kibosh their proceedings, but also credit to the Commission for reaching out to activists like me. And I'm not going to go into too many details, but I was reached out to along with a number of other ex-JW activists. And I was impressed with the level of their inquiries. I've always wanted to support their efforts to understand the religion more. But in one of my earliest conversations with the Charity Commission, I actually had a phone call with a previous investigator who's no longer with the Commission, who shall remain nameless. But I had like an hour-long phone call with this individual, and I'm still fairly traumatized by it, because in this phone call, it became clear that the Charity Commission, and by extension the UK government, is completely clueless when it comes to understanding the scope of the damage that Watchtower is doing. They are naive. They think that they arrogantly believe that, or the Charity Commission, that is, the Charity Commission arrogantly assumes that simply by having Watchtower on its list of charities, it can exert a positive influence on the organisation. So in other words, better the devil you know. Oh, well, at least they're on our radar, and maybe the fact that they're a registered charity might make them think twice before hurting people, before enacting abusive policies, etc., etc. Such arrogance, because this assumes, of course, that the governing body are remotely interested in what human, worldly governments think of them, as though they're kind of at their headquarters in Warwick thinking, oh, we don't want to upset the Charity Commission. They are not bothered in the slightest. This was demonstrated, well, it's been demonstrated multiple times, but certainly with the December 2018 Watchtower, which overtly encouraged women with abusive spouses to stick it out, to endure, because this is the best thing apparently for abused women. Charity Commission had nothing to say. Neither did any of the prominent domestic violence charities in the UK, for reasons best known to them. But going back to this phone call, I was left fairly traumatized by how naive the investigator was. He was basically dismissing the impact of the Australian Royal Commission findings, because I was making the argument in the phone call, you've got all of the information you need, thanks to the work of the Australian Royal Commission, to establish the fact that abuse is being covered up by Watchtower, that they have this practice, because they were doing it in Australia. There's no reason at all for them to be doing it any differently in the UK, because the UK branch and the Australia branch are both under the governing body. So the problem is universal. And the investigator wasn't having that. He was saying, oh, well, we need to really consider these findings, and we need to investigate, and we need to make inquiries. And just because the Australian Royal Commission has decided this, that doesn't mean that we can decide this as well. And what we find since this conversation, I think it was 2016 when we had this conversation, the statutory inquiry is still going on. It's soon to enter its 6th year, this statutory inquiry. You don't need 5 years to find out that Watchtower is an abusive organisation that's covering up child sex abuse. You need an internet connection and 5 minutes on Google to figure this out. And I'm not saying that they are dragging their feet because they favour Watchtower and they want to give Watchtower a hand, I think that even if they wanted to do something, they couldn't because the law restricts them. And this has always been the most frustrating thing about the whole issue for me, is how powerless the Charity Commission is due to the nature of the law as it stands when it comes to charities. And given this opportunity by the NSS to say what I think on their website, which I'm incredibly grateful to them for, and bear in mind, the NSS is not a charity, so I can say whatever I like about the Charity Commission on their website, and they're not going to suffer for it because they're not a charity. They're a secular society. And by the way, I want it to be absolutely clear that I have cooperated with the Charity Commission and will always cooperate with them. My problem is that they simply don't have the legal clout to revoke Watchtower's charitable status, even if they wanted to, because the decision has already been made that if you're a religion, you get to be a charity. And this is why I think the NSS have been so on the ball with this, because in their report, they mentioned the fact that religion is listed in the list of charitable purposes for which you can apply for charitable status. And I'm going to read the list to you. Here it is, in fact. You'll see there that relieving poverty is on there, education is on there, religion, health, saving lives, citizenship or community development, the arts, amateur sport, human rights, religious or racial harmony, the protection of the environment, animal welfare, the efficiency of the armed forces, police, fire or ambulance services. All of these things have a tangible benefit to society. Even there where it says religious or racial harmony. So this isn't promoting religion, this is making sure that different religious or ethnic communities get on well with each other. That's clearly in everybody's interests, whether you're religious or not. Even the arts, what are we as a civilization if we don't have arts, if we don't have culture, if we don't have something to add some zest to life? All of these things, every single item on this list, has a tangible benefit to any country, not just the UK, apart from one, and that's religion. Because which religion are we talking about? Who gets to decide which religion is advantageous and which isn't? Are we saying all religions are advantageous? Again, who makes that decision? Because no matter what your personal views are when it comes to religion, you can find any number of people from any number of religions who have got tales of heartache and woe due to their experience within that group. So simply, religion shouldn't be on there. But of this nearly 170,000 charities, there are 12,000 that rely solely on that charitable purpose in order to receive money from the public. One of those is Watchtower. And when you go on there, if you track down the documents that they've submitted to the Charity Commission, giving their yearly figures and what have you, it's very clear that that's all they're interested in claiming as their charitable purpose. And furthermore, they are disingenuous in claiming that they are interested in promoting religion full stop, which they clearly aren't, because they believe that anyone who is a member of quote-unquote false religion is a follower of the harlot of Revelation and worthy of destruction. So it's not like they are happy with you believing just any religion. No, they want you to follow your religion and your religion alone. And what's more, as I bring out in my NSS article, it's not as simple as even being a Jehovah's Witness if you want to avoid annihilation according to their doctrine. You also have to be regular in the preaching work, as was highlighted in Tony Morris's January 2018 branch visit to Trinidad, in which he told his audience that they were going to lose their lives if they weren't involved in the preaching work on at least a weekly basis. No exaggeration. So given the opportunity to explore this what is for me a hugely emotional thing. I mean, when you make it out of a cult, you like to think that there's some solidarity waiting for you on the outside, and you like to think that there's maybe a warm blanket from the world, from the secular governments. No such thing. The government's part of the problem, because they are looking at Jehovah's Witnesses and saying, you get to be a charity. And as I point out in the article, that only adds insult to injury. How do I put it towards the end? I say, suffice to say, the many hundreds of ex-witness UK citizens who, like me, live daily with the hurt and heartache generated by this group are wounded anew when in horror they behold their tormentors being lauded as charitable, allowed by a seemingly indifferent government and its agencies to continue their reign of cruelty with zero censure or resistance. How can you be a charity when you are going around telling people that they need to join your group or they are worthy of death? How can you be a charity when you're breaking apart families if someone doesn't agree with your leadership? How can you be a charity if you are covering up child abuse on an industrial scale? How can you be a charity if you are dissuading young people from going to university or college? How can you be a charity if you are sending elders into hospitals to tell stricken patients in their most desperate hour that dying is preferable to receiving a blood transfusion? It's a disgrace. I'm sorry if our generation doesn't fix this, and I fully expect what I've written here to fall mostly on deaf ears. But at least it's a start. At least there's something that future generations can pick up on and carry the baton forward, because make no mistake, the clock's ticking on this. Organisations like Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses, there's many other abusive religious groups that are fraudulently claiming charitable status. Future generations will sort this out for us if we don't. So the sooner we start the campaign, the better. And if you, obviously, you may not necessarily be watching this from the UK. Most of you will probably be watching from America or Canada or elsewhere. But let's make a start, shall we? Write to your elected representatives. Find out if there's a secular society like the NSS in your country who can raise awareness of this, raise awareness of the fact that organisations that abuse people are getting tax breaks and just being awarded blanket charitable status just because they're religions. It's wrong and it needs to stop. So please do check out my NSS article. If you can, donate if you can to the wonderful work that the NSS are doing. Again, I'm just so proud that they have chosen to highlight this issue, an issue that is dear to my heart, and I'm sure dear to the hearts of many of you watching this. This needs to stop. It's just naive for governments to assume that a religion by default has everyone's interests at heart and not its own. So rant over. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for more videos. There will be a video shortly about a new arrival to the Evans family. But that's pretty much everything for now. Do subscribe to the John Cedars channel, and thank you so much for watching.